Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel, and we have some very special news for you guys today. Some news that has really kind of solidified what we have been saying here on the channel for quite some time. And we're going to start it off from the New York Post. AOC rips James Carville for blaming Virginia governorship loss on wokeness. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez blasted political strategist James Carville for blaming the Democratic candidate's loss in Virginia on progressives' stupid wokeness, saying the term is fashionably among older people. And this is from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez herself. Like the average audience for people seriously using the word woke in a 2021 political discussion are James Carville and Fox News pundits. So that should tell you all you need to know, the New York Democrat posted on the Twitters. And here's the thing. I'm going to read this again, and I want you guys who are astute, who are clever, who are sober, who are coherent, and common sense thinking people. You guys are going to get this, and it's going to make perfect sense. AOC rips James Carville for blaming Virginia governorship loss on wokeness. What does this say right here? Let me first tell you about what happened to me yesterday when I responded to something indicative to this, very similar to it. I think it had to do something with Joe Biden. Somebody responded to my tweet by saying, Donald Trump is so 2020. Or she said, I'm sorry, Donald Trump is so 2020. And it reminds me a lot of what she just said here. It's the same thing. It's the same idea. They fluff it off. They try to, just dismiss it as just, people just not understanding. People just too dumb to realize they don't know what they're saying. And so I told this woman who responded to me, I said, are you sorry about higher gas prices? Are you sorry about higher heating costs? Are you sorry about the jam up and bottleneck in LA? Are you sorry about the crisis at the border? Are you sorry about the people who lost their lives in the most incompetent exit in Afghanistan? Are you sorry about that? But are you still only focused on the fact, well, at least it's not Donald Trump? So AOC rips James Carville for blaming Virginia governorship loss on wokeness. Now you may be saying, Buzz, why are you saying it like James Carville? James Carville is the raging Cajun irritant. He is essentially James Carville was an advisor to the Clintons back in the early 90s. And his wife, ironically enough, was an advisor to the Republican Party, which was kind of amusing. But that's why I say James Carville, like the Cajuns, because he's a raging Cajun. But here's the thing. The Democrats, AOC, the squad, whomever, the left, do not realize that their ideology, their philosophy, and their worldview is not working. They are the problem. They don't realize that they are the problem. And James Carville is trying to tell them, hey, this wokeness, this outrage mob, this cancel culture, this intersectionality, this identitarianism, this CRT nonsense you guys are pushing, people aren't buying it. And see, and the thing about it is, if you read some additional tweets by AOC, I don't know if it's here, she actually said that they weren't woke enough. That the Democrats weren't doing enough progressivism and wokeness, and that's why they lost in Virginia. And I am totally fine with her thinking that, because it's absurd. These people do not realize that they are the problem. And so James Carville, coming out of retirement, I guess it just kind of pulled James Carville out of whatever hole he's been hiding it, and saying to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, you guys need to shift gears, because this wokeness, this cancel culture, this outrage mob, this orange man bad nonsense you guys have been pushing for 5 years now is not working. And I just kind of want to deviate a little bit from that, but we'll kind of weave it all in together. Now, from Viva Frey, who's an attorney there in Canada, great guy, the same FBI that submitted falsified documents to a FISA court to spy on Trump, the same FBI that entrapped Flynn, now raided James O'Keefe and Project Veritas over Ashley Biden's diary, but still hasn't gone after Hunter Biden. FBI totally hasn't been politically weaponized. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up is because Viva Frei and maybe many individuals like yourselves realize, common sense thinking people, that in fact what the Democrats are doing isn't working. And as I have said for quite some time, it is the establishment that worked to get Joe Biden elected. And so Joe Biden is really just a surrogate. He's just there as a figurehead so that the establishment can try to make their money back, try to, extrapolate and, pilfer from the United States so they can make up for the 4 years that President Trump held them back. So very similar to what I said to that woman yesterday on my response. But you have to realize that the Democrats, who not only not realize that they are the problem, they also weaponize the FBI and, of course, their other agency, the IRS. Now, I'm going to say this too as well. Going back to the FBI, we covered this last week. The Justice Department Inspector General Michael Horowitz report confirms two things. The Steele dossier was an unreliable source of information, and the FBI used it as the foundation of their investigation into President Trump anyway. So, again, the Democrats, the left, the progressives, the cancel culture, all these people do not realize, and I'm okay with it, I'm totally okay with it, they do not realize that they are actually the problem. Now, you may be saying to yourself, as many people do, many times when I'm reading things from the left, they usually just generalize or talk from their feelings. But if you're a member here on the BuzWeaver channel, go ahead and click that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, because it's never said enough. But if you guys weren't aware that the Democrats weaponized two specific agencies in our government, that is the FBI and the IRS. Now, you guys have probably heard several times already about the bank tracking of $600, deposits and withdrawals, so forth, when it comes to $600. And that's essentially, in very simple terms, in very common sense terms, taking the difficult, making it simple is what I do here on the BuzWeaver channel. That is so the Democrats can track if people are doing a side hustle. They want to know, are you having yard sales? Are you washing cars? Are you cutting grass? Are you cleaning houses? Are you doing some side hustle and not telling us that you're making this extra money? Sadly, that is it. That is it on the dime, on the dot. That is what it's for. So they can see if people are doing some sort of side hustle. It's a punishment for the poor. It's a punishment for the lower middle class, if you want to say like lower middle class or whatever. And I say that not in any way to disparage anyone at all. I'm simply saying this is how the Democrats go after those individuals who aren't wealthy, who aren't the upper middle class or the middle class. They check to see if you have a side hustle, to see if you're paying your taxes. So the Democrats are even going after the poor. Now, the reason I mention this is because, as Viva Frei said, the FBI totally hasn't been politically weaponized. Now, of course, he's being sarcastic here. But the reality is they are being weaponized, right? Lois Lerner was a perfect example during the Obama administration and the Biden administration. IRS apologizes for aggressive scrutiny of conservative groups. In a legal settlement that still awaits a federal judge's approval, the IRS expresses its sincere apology for mistreating a conservative organization called, they mistreated everybody. They mistreated everyone. It just happened to be that this particular group decided to pursue them legally, saying, you have no grounds to pursue this. This is a weaponized situation. You have targeted us for political reasons, and we're suing. And that's exactly what happened. Now, this was several years ago. This was back in 2017 when that happened, and this article is from 2013. So you can see that the Democrats use the FBI and the IRS as their personal weaponized, as their personal weapons. And we saw the same thing with, as he mentions here with James O'Keefe. So, just real briefly, James O'Keefe was contacted by some anonymous individual or individuals saying that they had Ashley Biden's diary that they found in a hotel. Now, don't you find it interesting how all these things seem to revolve around hotels and the FBI and hotels? This seems to be kind of their pattern. So, what happened was this group sent the diary or whatever this documentation was or document was to James O'Keefe. James O'Keefe was not comfortable with it, didn't think it was reliable, had no way to verify it, had no way to substantiate that it was even Ashley's diary or even a diary. He couldn't confirm any of this, so he wanted to send it back. Well, the attorney for this group, or these individuals, would not take the diary back. So what did James do? He called the FBI and said, we have some individuals that we can't confirm their identity. We don't know who they are. We don't know who they represent. Sent us this information that they identify as Ashley Biden's diary. And they went after two of James O'Keefe's reporters, former reporters, and then James O'Keefe himself. So you can see the strategy here. Remember when James O'Keefe went after Pfizer, when he exposed Pfizer, when he exposed many of the tech giants? They were very, very, very beyond livid with James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. So it could be very easily argued because, as I've said many times, the mainstream media, the legacy media, their unnamed sources do not have to answer to anyone. There is no body, there is no agency, there is no committee, there's no one they have to answer to, so they can do these kinds of things. They can do these kinds of nonsense. But what's even more interesting is, after the two former reporters who were looking into this, because apparently this has been going on for quite some time, I think over a year, those reporters were contacted within 1 hour of the FBI having raided these two people's homes. The New York Times contacted them by phone. How in the world does the New York Times know that the FBI has executed a search warrant when it's supposed to be sealed? When this information is supposed to be sealed? You guys remember when Roger Stone was arrested? CNN happened to be right there on his street with their cameras pointed in the right direction as the FBI executed that search warrant. So, put all this together, and what do you get? You have the Democrats weaponizing the FBI and the IRS to be their goon squad. So if you don't want to comply, if you don't want to cooperate, the Democrats will send the FBI or the IRS out to, well, particular groups or organizations or companies specifically they'll target with the IRS or with the FBI. The average everyday person, they just raise your taxes and raise fuel costs and do all these other sorts of things to essentially punish people. But this same manipulation, this same coercion, this same bullying and intimidation is what Joe Biden is doing currently with the vaccine mandate. There is no legal precedence behind the vaccine mandate. Companies and businesses are doing this on their own based upon a conference or a news conference that Joe Biden gave. So when he said fines and or vaccine mandate enforcement, there was no weight behind it, zero. And Joe Biden's approval right now is at 51, or his disapproval is at 51.7. His approval is at 42.8. Now this is in Real Clear Politics, an aggregated source that I like to use because you can see these are all the news agencies, every single news agency that this is aggregated from. So you're not getting it just from one source. You're getting it for, I think this is like around 100, maybe right at 100, a little over 100 different sources of polling. And then, of course, we also have very similar equivalent with Civex, which uses 123,690 responses to show you that Joe Biden's disapproval is 53%. His approval is at 37%. This is very, very, very terrible for the Democrats because you have to remember the mainstream media, Hollywood, tech giants, special interests, activists, they all do things to help the current Democrat president. They're always there to glow the president, puff up the president, give him softball questions, and just basically be there to support him in any way possible. So, the most important group here. Now, let's just take a look at this because this is very interesting. If we look at Democrats' approval, it's at 77% approval. Imagine that. When he first got elected, his approval was 90%. When the establishment established him as the president, he was at 90%. This is among Democrats. And now it's at 77 approval. Now, among Republicans, this will be no shocker to anybody, their disapproval is 95%. This has been relatively consistent, starting off at 90 as your baseline, and then slowly and quickly progressing to 95%. Now, here's where it becomes vitally important among independents. The individuals who are politically fatigued, who aren't keeping up with all of the nonsense that's going on, but they are aware that their gasoline prices are higher, their heating costs are higher, their taxes are higher, and of course they're spending more at the grocery store because there's higher prices on goods, and there's also a shortage, quite arguably a contrived scarcity, perhaps, although Pete Buttigieg has no idea what he's doing, but that's beside the point. So you can see here, when the illness became a little bit more of an issue, then he had a 55% disapprove, all the way up to a 56 disapprove. And then, of course, with what happened in Afghanistan, he jumped all the way up to a 58%. Wait a minute. Let's get right on it. A 57% disapproval. There we go. I'm trying to get it. There you go. 57. And then as of today, or as of November the 1st, his disapproval is 62%. So, the conclusion here, and I don't want to help out the Democrats in any way, shape, or form, the Democrats do not realize that they are, in fact, the problem. And if they continue pretending that they aren't the problem, or immunizing themselves from any ridicule, then they will continue to lose. And they probably will, because if they continue with this critical race theory, if they continue with this outrage mob, cancel culture mentality, it's going to be very bad for them in 2022. And this may be why Joe Biden and the administration and the Democrats, while they still have the power, they're going to try to pass this crazy nonsense like we saw with the infrastructure bill. Who knows what else they're going to try to pass to be able to wreak as much havoc on this country as possible before Republicans take the country back and potentially even see President Trump in 2024. Maybe the Republicans can win back the House and the Senate in 2022. We'll keep an eye on it. But nonetheless, that's what I have for you guys today. And if you haven't already, below this video, you can find the various links to my social media. I would encourage you guys to follow me there as I do daily posts. And of course, appearing right there on the screen here on YouTube, if you're following me here, that would be the channel icon to click on to subscribe, as well as to click notifications so you know when there's content here on the channel. Friday will be the release of Battlefield 2042, so I'll be doing a lot more shorts. I want to thank all you guys for your continued support, and I will see you in the next video.